Shalom, welcome to another episode of Inspiration from Zion. I'm Jonathan Feldstein, and I have the privilege of being your host, coming to you from the Judean Mountains. Well, actually, that's a lie. I'm not in the Judean Mountains, I'm in New Jersey, and that is not the original Bible Belt. Inspiration from Zion is a program of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. I hope you will find this conversation all of those. Through this program, we're excited to connect you to people and stories in and relating to Israel to give you a window to look through, experiencing aspects of life here that you wouldn't otherwise know about. We always want this to be interactive, so please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and send along any questions and any comments about any topic anytime. Or you can reach us at genesis123.co and follow and like Inspiration from Zion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today we're doing something new. We are not having a whole series of panelists. This is not a panel conversation, and I am not in the Judean Mountains. I am currently stranded in the United States. I've been here for a total of 6 weeks, but stranded for about two, unable to get home because of the war that's going on. And what I offered to do, and I've been spending most of the last 2 weeks doing all kinds of briefings like this and a tremendous number of media interviews, individual conversations and meetings in churches and other venues at a major ministry here in New Jersey just yesterday, which was a blessing, getting to see good friends and being away from home. It's hard to be away from your home, your physical home, your family, your country, and in general, and that's especially during times of war. What I'd like to do today is provide you a personal briefing, and I promise to bring some people up who shared some really important questions and also have been promoting this kind of on my behalf because they know, like you, like all of you, that uh, there have been many people who have questions, and I'll just share briefly. I assume my friend Jamie Sanchez is here. Jamie and I were together at the NRB convention a few weeks ago, and excuse me as I look to the side. I'm just trying to keep track of who all's here. Jamie and I were catching up and had some great questions that she thought were very basic, but they were basic, but they were very important. And that's why it's important to have conversations like this. So we're going to open it up to all questions, and that's what I want to do. But let me frame of where we are. And for those who are following live, amazing. Thank you. There are a lot of people who were here who signed up and a lot of people who are here live with us. And I look forward to your questions, and I invite you to use the Q&A feature for that. If you're following on video, or if you're following subsequently in the audio for the podcast, I want to invite you to please be in touch. So we're sure to get your email, and you're invited to be part of our live conversations like this in the future. We're speaking today. It is I have to look at my computer, on the 20th of March. It's a Thursday evening in New Jersey. We are, I believe, 19 days into this latest round of war with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and 19 days of nonstop, literally nonstop bombardment, and I'm going to get into that. But let me set the stage as to where we are. Many things can happen between now and when the video is uploaded, and more so between now and next week when the podcast, the audio hits. But we're taking a time capsule of what's going on now, but I'm going to broaden it in ways that are seasonal, that are related to how Israelis are coping. And hopefully by the time people get to follow this by the audio, I will be able to be home. I do have a flight scheduled on Monday, and hopefully that will continue. And I invite and appreciate all prayers. Why today is significant. I joked with somebody, today is also a day on the Islamic calendar, Eid al-Fitr. I don't know what they're celebrating, but it's the end of Ramadan. It's also the beginning of the month of Nisan, which is the biblical month, and I think as Jews and Christians, that's much more significant than any Islamic holiday that they might be celebrating. The first of Nisan is important. It's a biblical month. It happens to be the first month in the biblical calendar. I don't say the Jewish calendar because it's not a Jewish calendar. God didn't design it only for the Jewish people, although we observe it in a unique way, and all of our milestones are throughout. Nisan is the month in which we observe the tremendous the biblical festival and pilgrimage holiday called Passover, Pesach in Hebrew. It's the month of our redemption. I invite you, I don't have it here to show you live. I just thought about it, but just today I uploaded on the YouTube channel a 15-second clip of a newscaster closing out the broadcast with mentioning that we're in the month of redemption and we're praying that we are, in fact, at that point of redemption and praying for our soldiers. And I invite you to go to the Genesis 123 YouTube channel just to see that. It's inspiring. We're seeing God's hand. We're seeing God's hand as we begin the celebration in the month of Nisan and our redemption from 3,500 years ago of being in slavery for hundreds of years, where God basically poked the Egyptians in the eye, not just because they were enslaving us, but Egypt was the world's superpower then. And they worshipped a whole series of gods, obviously none of which were the true God. And when God brought the plagues, and when God, even the miracle of miracle, but Joseph finally realized it, he was sent to Egypt for a purpose. It ultimately ended up saving the Jewish people who reconstituted and grew strong in Egypt. And that led to our enslavement, and that ultimately led to the redemption. But the redemption, which we're celebrating at Passover, was a poke in the eye of the world's greatest superpower at the time, worshiping false gods, and he showed his divine might, and that's so incredible and miraculous. And then once we were liberated from slavery, it's not like it happened overnight. We weren't just transported from Egypt to be back in the land. It took 40 years, and over the course of the 40 years, there were countless miracles as well. Well, we're in that similar phase, and I don't want to say that Iran today, under the Islamic Republic, is or has ever been a superpower, but it is if there were a terrorist superpower, it would be that. And what we're seeing is the wholesale destruction of the infrastructure behind the Islamic Republic. And we're seeing tremendous miracles. We're seeing, of course, yes, intelligence in the US and Israel collaborating together on the military strikes and taking out so many leaders of the Islamic Republic and the IRGC and the Basij and infrastructures within the Islamic Republic that took tremendous precision and tremendous intelligence. And I hope I'm alive long enough just to be able to read the stories, the history of this operation and what's taking place right now. But in a way, we're also seeing God poking in the eyes, not just the Islamic Republic, but all of the terrorist proxies that they have given birth to, and all of the Islamists around the world who realize, I hope they're realizing, that their God is a false God, that they worship a God called Allah. He is not the creator of the universe. He is a God of vengeance, a God of hate, a God of punishment, and and the true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is poking Allah in the eyes right now. And I might, some people might take offense with that. I might get a fatwa on me just for having said that. But it's true. It's true. We're seeing that. And I'm hoping that not only is God revealing his might, but his protection and his unbroken commitment to Israel and the Jewish people, but also for Christians and Jews around the world, and also for people who don't yet have a relationship with the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that they will realize that he is not only the God, but the true God and the only God. And we're also realizing something else that's taking place that's remarkable. And I wish someone would research it, and please let me know. Pastors on board, I'm charging you with that, to please let me know. I have the privilege of living in Israel, except for the last 6 weeks, for most of the last 21 and a half years. And I get to experience prophecies. I get to be part of prophecies, of being an old man myself, walking in the streets of Jerusalem and seeing my children and grandchildren playing in the streets in Hebrew, in the reborn language, being able to not only taste the fruits of the land that's been become vibrant again with our restoration to the land, but even through our program with my dear friend Marzia Mirizadeh, who's here with us, to be able to harvest the fruit of the land through our program called Root and Branch, and I invite you to be part of that. But there's one prophecy that makes me think a lot, and the last several months has been Googled a lot. Where is it? Jeremiah 49, where God speaks of his breaking the bow of Elam, destroying the might of Elam. And for those of you who don't know that, who have not yet Googled it since last June, and to see what's happening, I believe that that's the only prophecy that is related to a place that's not Israel and not involving the Jewish people. And God said He's going to destroy them and scatter them, and then He's going to build His kingdom there, set up His throne in Elam. I think that we may be in the midst of that. I'm not a prophet by any stretch. I just want to mention two other quick things. That's to set up the season. But tonight, I think I mentioned before, my daughters called me from their bomb shelters. They were on the streets in Israel, one in her apartment, one out, and had to take cover. Not once, not two times, not three times, but four times tonight, just after midnight. And they spent over an hour in the bomb shelters because of incoming missiles from Iran. Nevertheless, here's the paradox in all of it, and maybe it's appropriate also as we begin this month of Nisan. Um, this week, whoever does the ranking of the happiest countries in the world, Israel was ranked yet again among the top 10. We're the eighth happiest country in the world, and that's for 2025, following the same pattern from 2023 and 2024 and years before. But what's so significant about that? These are years in which we've been at war, and yet Israelis are happy. Israelis are hopeful. We have purpose, and I think that that's the stage that I'd like to set today as we have this conversation about the Iran war, about the impact of the war that we're experiencing right now and the fallout and what can be done. I'm trying to be mindful of the time as I look because I don't want to be speaking directly all night. I really do want to take your questions as well. And I know there's some people who have lined up to hopefully bring on board. And I do invite your questions again at the using the Q&A feature. So what's happening? Other than me not being home. My hand is on the pulse. I'm following the news obsessively, and from family and friends, I'm getting all kinds of personal updates. The first thing that and I know that we have people from all over the world who are joining and who are registered for this conversation today. We have to remember that this is indeed a war that's in Americans' interests. And I speak as a dual citizen, as an American and as an Israeli. I'm mindful. I remember in my youth the beginning of the Islamic Republic and the taking over the American embassy and the kidnapping of 52 Americans and holding them for 444 days. I remember that so well depicted in the movie Argo. And I know as a fact that since then, in the Islamic Republic, people have been forced, and some out of conviction and some out of fear, to be chanting death to America and death to Israel every day for the last 47 years. Maybe someone wants to do the math and multiply 47 times 365. I'd like to know how many days that is that they've been chanting death to America. And it's not simply a cute rhyme that sounds funny in Farsi, or might be something that you would see cheerleaders chanting at a pep rally if they were to have such a thing there. This is actually a war cry. In 1979, when they took over the American embassy, that was an act of war. We have effectively been at war with Iran for 47 years. We know that they have agents here. We know they have sleeper cells here. We know that they have plotted to assassinate President Trump. We know that our interests, that they threaten not only the physical well-being of the United States and Israel and the West, but also the spiritual, the Judeo-Christian values upon which we are based. So indeed, this is an American war. It is just, it is necessary. It is a war of good versus evil. And I know that it's not just Americans, because when the price of fuel goes up around the world, everyone bears the brunt. It is not a consequence directly of the war necessarily. The war is an outcome of decades of appeasement, of the Islamic Republic, and unfortunately, under two previous administrations, the funding of the Islamic Republic by the United States, releasing billions of dollars, basically propping them up, basically emboldening them. And I'm not saying if there wasn't a war and the Straits of Hormuz were not being blocked, that we wouldn't still see a price of gas increase. And that's not just an American problem, it's a problem all over the world. But America does not have the privilege of looking away from righteous wars and necessary wars around the world because, as I mentioned, Egypt was then the world superpower, and Iran, to its extent, the world's evil superpower in the last 47 years. The United States is the superpower, is the greatest hope. And that means we have responsibilities also to other places in the world in addition to our own. And for those who chant America first, that does not mean America only. America has very deep interests in and across the world. And I would say the last thing on this point, we as Jews and Christians understand that this is a war of good and evil more than anyone else. And these are messages that you need to, that I encourage, if you take away nothing from tonight's conversation, that you please will take away that we need to get the truth out about the truth, capital T, capital T. It is the truth. This is good and evil, and there is not any gray area in between. We also know that we are in a war with Iran's proxies. Today, literally, and in the last 2 weeks specifically, we have seen Hezbollah and Israel's northern border inside Lebanon exert tremendous pressure by firing, I don't know how many thousands of, or maybe tens of thousands of missiles and rockets and drones at northern Israel. What's particularly haunting, and even one of my daughters said to me tonight from her bomb shelter, that at least in Jerusalem, they have a few minutes advance warning. When missiles and rockets and drones are being fired from Lebanon, there's no advance warning. They get about 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes to take cover maximum. And I haven't been home in a while, so I don't know yet exactly what devastation physically, but I know that that's become very taxing. If you look at the maps where the missiles and rockets and drones have been fired at northern Israel, you see massive areas of millions of people that are constantly living in their bomb shelters. We know the Houthis in Yemen are another proxy. They have not yet gotten out of line, and maybe because they want to preserve their might for and not get destroyed and be one of the parties getting bombarded as well at the moment. Maybe they want to be able to tie up the Gulf of Aden and international shipping there, and they want to wreak havoc once the war with Iran has died down and Hezbollah is destroyed. But the Houthis are still on deck, and anything could go there. And I would also point out that the war in Gaza is not over. And yes, there is officially a ceasefire, but there is still combat, and there are tens of thousands or more reservists who are spending their days and nights taking on terrorists who are still trying to kill them and all of us in Israel. The threats are significant. The threats today in Israel are significant. While indeed the ability for the Iranian regime to send over hundreds of missiles at a time has been taken apart, literally, they're still sending dozens at a time, and they've now added cluster bombs to them, which adds to the devastation. But these are massive bombardments, and whether or not there are hundreds or dozens of missiles, and somehow they still have the ability to launch them, both from Lebanon and from Iran, it sends at any one time, we're sending millions of Israelis to their bomb shelters, and people need to know that we do live in our bomb shelters, and that people have either in their own homes, as I do, or in their buildings, in public buildings, um, bomb shelters are part of the architecture. It's shocking what they still have. We need to understand that they are targeting civilians. They're trying to make it as painful for civilians, and they're trying to kill and cause as much damage to civilians, albeit in the framework of saying, yes, we want to attack this military base, we want to attack your nuclear reactor, we want to attack this place and that place. But ultimately, the casualties are and have been civilian. These are their goals. This is why it's a war of good versus evil. And this is why it's a war that needs to be won decisively, not a can kick further down the road. We don't have the luxury for that anymore. Many of you have asked in your questions leading up to this, how are we coping, we Israelis, living in bomb shelters? I'll tell you what, right now 3:20 in the morning. My daughter, several hours ago, put her four boys to sleep. The three older ones, who are 3, 5, and 7, are sleeping in the bomb shelter because it's too difficult in the middle of the night, even with a 3 or 4 minute warning, to move four sleeping boys, especially when she was by herself. And my son-in-law was called up into reserves. And we're seeing that happen. And we live in an area that's under relatively little threat at the moment, although tonight in Israel time, there were many threats in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas in the Judean mountains where we live. But not only are parents putting their kids to sleep inside the bomb shelters, there's a tremendous amount of stress. The stress is coming from that, from the fact that this is actually really the norm in which we live. You have to understand, someone asked, I just came from a briefing. I see that Deb Campbell joined a briefing that she hosted me with the Daughters of Zion, and I'm so glad that she's here. And I don't know if there's anyone else from that briefing, but we discussed the fact that the kids, someone asked the question of whether schools are open. In my community where I live, schools have been reopened. But the first day they went back, of course, there was an air raid siren, and all the kids had to go to their bomb shelters in their schools and in their preschools. Um, but in much of the country, schools have not reopened. So we're seeing, first of all, being out of your normal environment. Kids, whether they complain about going to school or not, that's their normal environment. That's where they're friends. That's where they can play and learn and explore things. To be shut up in their house, no matter how big or beautiful a house might be, or conversely not, being on top of one another, and parents stuck at home. And many parents are stuck at home because they have to work from home. Unless they're essential workers, but an essential worker like my daughter can't go to work, and when my son-in-law is called up to the reserves again. So it's a cyclical thing. And in my children are amazing parents, but even being on top of each other all day, every day can become wearing. Children, of course, don't know how to express their fears and their anxiety so well. So sometimes they behave like children, and sometimes parents, adults, who are stressed and who aren't sleeping and who aren't working and who have this dual job of keeping things running in their house and their kids normal, are also stressed. And sometimes adults behave like children. It's difficult. My daughter told me that at the beginning of this operation, there was a young woman from overseas studying in a girls' seminary who came and volunteered just for a couple of days. And she said, what a respite that was. And there isn't enough of that, and because so many people have been called up, um, especially this month. Israelis are hopeful. We know, we'll remind ourselves as we recite and prepare to reenact, if you will, the redemption from slavery in Egypt. We know that God has our back, but we also know that, look, there was stress then, and the lights were out, and there were plagues, and there wasn't a lot of food to go around. And then they got stuck in the desert for 40 years, complaining all along the way, not seeing the redemptive part. It's not easy, by the way, we're all human beings. It's not easy to be in the midst of trauma or a new circumstance and not see the redemptive stuff. And maybe it's a little bit of hubris for me sitting in New Jersey talking about redemptive stuff when they're sleeping in their clothes. So if they have to go to the public bomb shelter, they're not dressed in a way that's inappropriate, or have shoes next to the door so they can throw them on quickly. But we're hopeful, but we're fearful, and we're under stress, and there's a tremendous amount of sleeplessness. And yet, and what I'm hearing, and I'm looking forward to getting home for a whole lot of reasons, if you pull out the awareness of all of the missiles and all of the threats, what I'm hearing is that Israelis are by and large trying to go back to life as much as normal as possible. But what is that norm? And how is it a norm that, in fact, we're living in our homes near our bomb shelters? Or my daughters, when they're planning where they're going to have meals this coming Shabbat, have planned to bring their phones. And for those of you who know, as Orthodox Jews, we don't use our phones on Shabbat. We don't use electrical devices and technology unless it involves saving lives. So they're going to be carrying their phones, which they should, which they must, in order to get those advance notice air raid sirens, and that's essential. But they're also planning the routes in which they're going to walk on Shabbat, based on where they know that there are bomb shelters that they can get to or an apartment building that they can knock on somebody's door. That's not a normal way to live, but it's just the norm of how we have begun to normalize this strange circumstance. I want to begin to wrap up my comments, and there's several people here. I haven't really gotten a chance to see who all's here, and specifically those of you who are really actively promoting this conversation because there are people who I want to bring you up first for questions. But I want to give you a sense of what to look for. And I don't know what CNN and Fox News and other news sites that you might follow are going to be reporting on in the coming days. I don't know what's indeed going to be happening in the coming days. But one of the things I think we all need to look for is things heating up in Lebanon. I saw that the UN, of course, is condemning Israel for bombing things in Lebanon, and Rashida Tlaib and her ilk are condemning Israel for bombing things in Lebanon, and there are casualties, and I'm sure there are. But unfortunately, that's a consequence of the UN not doing anything to do its job, actually sending in peacekeeping forces. For every UN resolution that's stopped violence from Hezbollah in Lebanon being broken, and since late 2024, when we had our last big incursion into Lebanon to push the Hezbollah back north of what's called the Litani River. And thank God they are, because otherwise their missiles would be coming that much further south into Israel. All these people are condemning, they're talking about the Muslims being killed during Ramadan. Well, I'm sorry. Too bad. First of all, many of the Muslims who are being killed are, in fact, the terrorists. So they should be killed. And second of all, the people who have allowed their homes and their schools and their mosques and their hospitals to be used as bases for Hezbollah, whether it's storing weapons or anything else. I'm sorry, if you play with fire, you're going to get burned, and that's exactly what's going to happen. But we need to be keeping an eye on what's going to happen, because if things continue to heat up, or if, God forbid, one of those missiles or rockets gets through and hits a crowded apartment building, and there are casualties, we may see that as a trigger for what's, I'm sure, being planned as a potential to have to do a further ground incursion to either push Hezbollah further back or completely eliminate Hezbollah, or to give the Lebanese people, if they have the stomach for it, as we hope the Iranian people will, to take their country back from the terrorists. And Hezbollah, Lebanon under Hezbollah has been living under a heel of terrorists, Shiite Islamic terrorists, just like 90 million people in Iran have been for a shorter time, but for no less significant damage. And I also know that if things heat up in Lebanon, then I'm likely to see more of my male family members called up into reserves, and that's indeed scary on a personal level. We need to be looking for opportunities for regime change. I was excited to read this week that Israel struck one of the highest ranking terrorist leaders of the Islamic Republic, but also the head of the Basij, and many of the sites where the Basij, that's the paramilitary force on the street that's keeping the Iranians oppressed and shooting them. They're the ones who are largely responsible for the tens of thousands of people who have died since January and hundreds of thousands who have been injured. The fact that we're hitting them, I'm hoping, I'm praying, will put a wind in the sail of the Iranian people, that they can come and take their own country back. I don't see any other way of doing that. I don't know that US or Israel or anyone else can just go in and pull out a person and then see everything else fall into place. The regime change is necessary. I believe when it happens, it will bring us closer to world peace, short of the actual world peace that we as Jews and Christians pray for in the coming of Messiah, or short of a Miss America or Miss Universe pageant where, when asked what is they pray for, the pageant participants will say they pray for world peace. I actually think that the elimination of the Islamic Republic will bring us closer to world peace than we have seen, certainly since the Second World War, but I would contend that the Islamic Republic is a bigger threat to the world today than the Nazis and Japanese collectively were to the world in the Second World War. And what if not? And what if not? And what if elements of the regime are still allowed to stand? Or what if there is regime change and there are elements of the regime that are still infiltrating, which they may very well try to do? It's not going to be an easy job, and these are things I headed up this section. I wrote a note here, but what to look for. We need to look for these things. We need to pray, me personally, and I know tens of millions of Iranians, and I know my friend Marzi, who's here with us today, and many of you are praying that Reza Pahlavi will return to Iran and restore the reign that his grandfather began. I don't know, more than 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, and bring Iran to freedom and with democratic values, and to become a productive member of the family of nations, to see peace between Iran and Israel under what we hope will be called the Cyrus Accords. And that's not just a reborn peace from what was abrupted or aborted in 1979, but going back to King Cyrus, when King Cyrus allowed the Jewish people to return and enabled us to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. There are many things that could get in the way of smooth transitions, and it may not be smooth transitions. So I encourage you to look for what these things might be, and I encourage you to pray that we will have good outcomes. I want to wrap up so I don't forget, and then I want to take questions by giving you things that you, of course, can do. I rarely do an event where I lead with donations. That's not my thing. We are a nonprofit, the Genesis 123 Foundation, and we exist on donations, and that allows us to do all of our programs. And if you're looking for a reliable and trustworthy place to give for emergency projects in Israel, know that we are doing that. Know that our hand is on the pulse with what soldiers are needing for humanitarian, social service type things. And I've gotten a lot of requests, much more than we can accommodate at this time. I've gotten a lot of requests for the at-risk youth. I know that if I had the ability, I would ask each of you to send a duffel bag full of indoor games and toys that we could bring to children in central Israel who are stuck in their homes, and disperse them. These are things that are necessary, and I just prayerfully invite you to consider making a donation at genesis123.co. But that's not my main point here today. The main point is to tell you to pray, because as donations make us be able to do our job, prayer is God's currency. And all of you can pray, and it doesn't cost anything. And you can be praying right now, and you can be praying as soon as we finish, and you can tell other people to pray. And that's infectious, and it multiplies, and God hears our prayers. He doesn't always answer them the way we want, but prayer is the most important thing that you can do. I want to encourage you to advocate for truth. There's a lot of lies out there. There's a lot of mistruth. There's a lot of half truth. And for those of you who don't know the details, I certainly encourage you to be in touch. I'm glad to be a resource. There are other resources to know the truth and to advocate for it. And when you see hateful things online that are inaccurate or you think might be inaccurate, check it out and resist it. Don't just scroll past it. Don't give a thumbs up to something that you think might actually be positive when in fact it's not. We need to really grab this bull by the horns, because it says that we are literally fighting a fight on seven fronts physically, but the eighth front is a fight against truth. So I encourage you, and I encourage you to ask any questions about that. I know that some of you, let me go to the questions in the Q&A, and then I'm going to bring up, actually, let me do a couple of things. A couple of you I'm going to invite who we discussed beforehand, those of you who have been helpful in promoting this. I'm going to bring you up first to have an opportunity to make any comments. If you want to join as a panelist, I'm putting you up, and we will take questions from you. But I also want to scroll through the questions that have been asked. And forgive me while I'm trying to talk to you and double task. It's hard for me to see who all is here with us. John Haller, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you'd made it. You said you were traveling. John Riley, you've got two accounts here. I'm not sure which one to promote you to, but I'm definitely having John Riley ask me some questions, because John Riley asks good questions. And is Jamie? Yeah. Gotta keep scrolling down. I don't see my friend Jamie. Jamie, if you're here, put a note in the Q&A so I know you're here and I am not missing you. Bishop Leon Benjamin. I'm just popping you all into this right now, and then we'll go to you one at a time. And if I'm missing any of you, then use the Q&A. Let me go to the questions first before I invite my friends to come and speak. Okay, Adriana said hi. Hi back. I'm glad you're here from South Florida, and George in Prince George, British Columbia. Paul, I think I just put you up, didn't I, Paul? In Chicago, Cindy in Atlanta, Keith Fox from Keith and Kathleen Fox in Mississippi. Amazing you're here. Um, Hebrews love Japanese cars. Chad, I don't know what that means, but okay. Um, Chad also noted that Canada is ranked the 28th happiest country in the world. Oh, thank you, Delia. 1,937 days since November 4th of 1979. That's an important number, folks. Write that down. 1,937 days that the Islamic Republic. Oh no, but Chad said it's 1,700. Okay, there's a difference, but we're talking about nearly 20,000 days that the United States has been in a state of war against the Islamic Republic and vice versa. Let me just continue to scroll through. Thank you, Donald Powers, for your compliments. I appreciate that. Oh, John Haller's only on an airplane, so he can listen. John, if you have a question that you'd like me to address, pop it in. Carl Springs, Ken Barron. Oh, Ken, you're on. Good. Okay. I'm going to pop you up here. Thank you. Um, let me get to, well, Martine, you asked about the prophecy in Elam. It's Jeremiah 49, I think it's verse 34 or 35. If anyone wants to put that into the Q&A, the correct verse, or if anyone can pop that in. John Riley, I propped you up. I built you up because John Riley, unfortunately, Kelly Wright was going to join from the senior White House news correspondent from CBN. He was going to join, but he's got to be up at 4:30 in the morning to be on air. So I think Kelly was unable to make it. But John Riley, you're an unbelievable journalist. You always have me on your show, and I would love it if you would unmute yourself and tell me what questions you think that I didn't cover and that we need to cover.
Man, thank you, Jonathan, for everything that you do with Genesis 123. We love and appreciate you, and I know I speak on behalf of everybody here. We're praying for you, your family. I know it's been so difficult for you to be away from your family for this time, but we know you're going to be back with them very, very soon. So we're praying for all of Israel. I'm wondering if you, as somebody who lives in Israel, want to comment on the changing dynamics between the Gulf states. We've seen what Iran has done, to the Gulf states, Saudi and the UAE and all that. And before the war, there seemed to be a warming up of relationships, especially between Saudi. So I'm just wondering how that dynamic, that relationship may change, after the war, and maybe what your thoughts are on that.
Excellent question. There are many dynamics in the Gulf. And the first thing that I would say, I wonder if Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, is not kicking himself gently in the butt, thinking, I should have gotten into the Abraham Accords, because part of the plan of the Abraham Accords was to build a pipeline from the Gulf, from the Persian Gulf across straight through to Israel, where oil could have been being transported now as we speak to the port of Ashdod on the Mediterranean, and the closure of the Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz would be insignificant, or at least insignificant to the West. Perhaps the Chinese would continue to suffer, and that's not a terrible thing from my assessment. So I wonder if maybe this is making that awareness that they should have been in it a while ago. For those who have been on the right side, the Bahrainis and the Emiratis, I think that they will continue to be. I don't trust and never will trust under its current Islamic influence Qatar. I think it's tremendous irony that the Qataris have also been attacked Where did I miss? Kuwait. There was apparently a missile from Iran that went as far as Turkey. That kind of cracks me up. But Turkey is a NATO country, and that could spell a whole. That wasn't your question. You asked about the Gulf states, but Turkey is an Islamic state trying to rebuild its caliphate, more leaning toward the Muslim Brotherhood than many of the other quote unquote moderate Arab states. I think we could see a realigning. I think the reflexive reaction for many of them has been to blame Israel, of course, because that's been in their blood for however many decades, a century, at least. I think that under behind the scenes, they might not be blaming Israel so much, and we even heard that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has been encouraging not Israel per se, but that the strikes continue. I'm a little surprised that they've stayed out of it. The Saudis, the Emiratis, even the Qataris, they've been attacked, and I don't know why they're letting that continue to happen. I do. I don't know the answer to this, but I do hear that they might fear a democratic Iran. I would hope that that wouldn't be the case. I would hope that the democratic Iran uh, would breed shades of democracy in the Middle East and hopefully also undermine some of the radical Islam that Iran has been hijacked by over the last nearly half century. But time will tell. The you didn't ask the question. We're also in an election year in Israel, and any one little thing could trigger this war going from really, really good to really, really bad, or the other way around. And I think that there are many things that we can't project that could be those triggers in the Gulf states that would either bring them in or at some point would cause them to get their backs up and more forcefully blame Israel. But right now, it's hard for me to imagine that any of them are doing anything but smiling and maybe laughing that the threats, and they have been threatened previously and recently by the Islamic Republic, that they're not happy to see that, and they might not be watching the videos over and over and putting together their own tapes of this. But it's a good question, and I'm glad you raised it because that's something also that needs to be watched, John. And I'd love to have that conversation with you as things unfold. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Did you have any other question, John, or should I bump over to someone else?
Yeah, bump over to somebody else, and that the only thing I would leave with everybody is where's the outrage over these cluster bombs that you don't hear much in the news media, about that. It's banned by 120 countries, but you talk about getting the right news media. We really need to be careful about the news that we consume about Israel. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, the cluster bombs are less to be outraged about when they're cluster bombing Jewish people. So I think that's part of the scenario. If God forbid Israel were to use cluster bombs, which we don't and never have, we would hear that in the media clearly. But thank you, John. Stay with us. If you have any more questions, feel free to chime in. I want to go to Dana White, who's here. We've actually never met in person, but had a fabulous conversation on the Inspiration from Zion podcast January, yeah. And Dana, I'm so thrilled. I saw maybe you weren't going to make it, and here you are. I'm really glad that you are here.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for being patient with me. My mom fell and I just needed to
Oh,
go check on her. So,
she
um,
okay?
yeah, she's going to be fine. So, thank you
Good.
very much. So, I'm sorry I missed some. What I would like to ask, and I'm sorry if you've already answered this, but because you've already answered the question I actually registered for. But one question I would like to know is how is morale among the IDF? It's been it's been a rough couple of years. And you have a huge reserve force, and these are people's lives that have been disrupted. And so I'm really curious about how morale is among the IDF. Um, and I appreciate what you said, what we can do to pray and perhaps some duffel bags for kids. But I'm curious about how are they feeling? How are they what is it? Has there been any reaction to Trump's disclosure that he told Netanyahu not to hit any more oil. Like, can you give me a sense of that?
I haven't heard anything about a reaction to Trump saying not about not hitting oil sites. And also, I see John posted a question about that yesterday. President Trump criticized Israel for bombing Iran's oil fields. What is it? Was it a communication glitch, or did the United States and Israel have different agendas? I don't know the answer to that question, John. I don't know, but and this all just happened, so I'm not sure how that went down, and I don't know if the U.S. and Israel are in fact out of sync, or if that's something that President Trump wanted to deny or play down at this point. We don't know the answers to that yet. I think that, Dana, to your question about the morale of the soldiers, generally, as soldiers, people are feeling very, very good, very, very strong. But as you mentioned, to my point earlier, when a soldier, it's not the same for my 20-year-old son. He's not married. He doesn't have a family. He has a family, his parents and siblings, but he doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids, and there's not that same dynamic. Of course, yes, we're worried about him, and when he sends us cryptic notes, it does it doesn't help with sleep. Let's just put it that way. But it's very different when a 35-year-old son-in-law is gone and leaving a daughter, and because the impact is on the spouse, the impact is on the children, even if the children are too young to fully understand what's going on, there is an impact. We see that in their behavior. I see that, and I know that that's anecdotally a fact throughout much of Israel. But nevertheless, people are feeling very encouraged, but very beleaguered. I will tell you that 2 years ago, when we were also very encouraged, and I began handing out thousands of winter jackets to reservists as part of our Genesis 123 Foundation program, I would always tell them to be sure that they knew that the donations were coming from Christians all over the world. And they were so encouraged and grateful because many of them articulated that they're feeling very alone. I think if I was a pilot, I would be, doing this dance a lot because we have air superiority. I think the intelligence divisions should be patting themselves and one another on the back because of knowing the target banks and knowing the intelligence and having hacked the things that we've hacked. And we only know a tiny fraction of that. I will tell you, I was very proud on a personal level to hear that my youngest son-in-law, my newest son-in-law, tried at the beginning of this to volunteer to go up into reserves, into his unit, which is it doesn't matter what he does. He tried to volunteer, and he was not taken because they didn't need him now. But the operative word is now, and he's ready to go, and people are ready to go. But it's tiring, and but they're not working, and but just like here in America, fuel prices are gas is over $8 a gallon for the equivalent amount, and imports have been struck tremendously because except for El Al, no one's flying in. So there's a financial, social, psychological component. Someone asked me about PTSD today or yesterday in one of my previous interviews or briefing. I said, yeah, there's PTSD. It's present trauma stress disorder. We haven't had a moment to breathe since October 7th of 23. And that does have an impact. But because, as I mentioned before, this is kind of our norm, we're living with that norm. And and we will continue. I will say one more point on that. We will probably also continue to see this, however it evolves, also devolve to some extent because we're in an election year. And that means the political divisiveness will also begin to get in the way. Dana, you unmuted yourself. You want me to follow up?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me. And this is a really important discussion, and I'm glad to be a part of it as a Christian. And just thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here and others. Let me go to Bishop Leon Benjamin. Thank you for sharing this as widely as you did. I know a lot of people said that they joined our and subscribed to this because you referred them.
Amen, amen, amen. God bless you, Jonathan, my dear friend. And this is just so timely. And we met back as far as back as 2019.
When you were
So
running.
it's it's been a great journey with you and learning all the things about what you do in Genesis 1, 2, 3 foundation. And so getting the inside scoop. I wanted to ask a question and then also put out a prayer because you've been on our prayer call, our national prayer call. You prayed with us at Coalition of Leaders United, along with our SEAL Team Six. And but I want you, could you give a, because we just came back from Israel back in December, and the people they don't look like they were afraid. What is the relationship between Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the areas, like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, some of the areas, that might have got hit. What is your sense of the relationship, though, from those who are not extremists or those who are not trying to attack? What's your take on that?
Good question. Well, right now, Israelis are being targeted regardless of whether we're Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, or any other ethnic or religious group. I will say for Marzi, who's here, Cindy, Eric, a couple of people who I can see have participated in Root and Branch in the first year that we did our program. Our driver was a Bedouin Arab Muslim from the southern part, and he's being targeted just as much as anyone else, all of us, and we're all in this together. And I think there's a great sense of solidarity on that. The one soldier who was killed so far, I believe, was a Druze soldier. I think there's some feedback. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know. Leon, can maybe unmute yourself while I think maybe you were getting feedback. Yeah, thank you. And there's a great sense of solidarity. We're all in this together. Nobody is any less under arrested than any other, and especially when many missiles and air raid sirens are coming across northern Israel, which has a heavy Arab population. I would love it for Tucker Carlson to come on and say, yeah, you know what? I support the Arabs and the Christians in Israel, and the Iranians are targeting Christians in Israel. It's only when he can blame Jews, but Christian Arabs are suffering the same way as Muslim Arabs, as same way as Druze, the same way as Jews, and we're all in this together. I don't think that plays a role. Yeah, but as I said when in response to part of Dana's question, we're in an election year, and we will begin to see political divisiveness take place. But right now, we're a country that's being bombed across the board, regardless of our ethnicity and religion, and we're standing pretty firmly together. I haven't seen any indications to the contrary.
Well, we're looking to support, and we're going to get our coalition to support Genesis 1, 2, 3 Foundation. I think it's because you have the inside scoop, because we actually know someone, unlike some of the commercials, we don't know where they're coming from, but we actually know you. We know that you're there and you're getting you've blessed the soldiers, even your own children that are soldiers. It's amazing how everyone over there. This is another question. Is it true that everyone in Israel have to serve in the military? Is that true or false?
That's actually not true. There are categories of Israelis who don't serve. Um, Druze who don't necessarily consider themselves Arabs, but are Arabic in culture and language, do serve, and they are drafted. Many Bedouin Arabs who are Muslim are drafted and or volunteer, but non-Bedouin Muslims are not drafted. We're seeing a big and Christian Arabs who make up a very small percent of the population, but we're seeing many more Christian Arabs volunteering to serve. I just a week before flying here, I've been here for 6 weeks already. I made a big pot of soup to bring to a base right near my house. I do that. It's one of the things we do at Genesis 123 Foundation. And I was so excited to see a Christian Arab soldier from Nazareth serving there on the base with a bunch of Israeli Jews. And we had a great conversation. And one of the things, and I knew this anecdotally, but one of the things that's not really about your question, but I feel bad for him, is that he gets a special permission to leave base not in uniform. Because when he goes home to his Arab community, not everyone loves the fact that Christian Arabs are serving in the army and at a growing percent, and he and his family might be harassed or threatened as a result. Um, and as far as the Jewish community, which is one of the political hot potatoes that has been a source of tension the last couple of years, the last several years, and will be a source of contention this year, is the ultra Orthodox community is largely exempt from doing military service. And I would say the last category, we're still not anywhere near half of the population, but there's these subsets. My daughters as Orthodox women are also eligible to become exempt from military service because it's not a military environment, an appropriate, religiously appropriate environment for modest Jewish women. But as a result, many of them serve in what's called National Civil Service or Shirut Leumi. My daughters have all done that. And my hope and my belief is that all Israelis, Orthodox, ultra Orthodox Jews, Israeli Arabs, all as Israelis, if we're getting bombed together, we all need to serve together, even if it's just volunteer work in a hospital or school or some other place where we can help one another. So thank you for that question.
Do I have one more question? I wanted to
You
ask
can
about
have one more, Bishop.
the bomb shelters. Why is it so important that many of the
Oh.
houses over there are now made? And when did it start that they have automatically bomb shelters are in the homes?
Yeah, we built our first house in Israel about 20 years ago. And bomb shelters. We had two in our house. We have one in our apartment. Um, those are essential, and I would say it's at least the last 30 years that all new construction people have bomb shelters built within, and that means a double thick steel reinforced concrete wall and a special door that shuts to prevent uh, things blowing up or falling into the room. I will tell you that with the missiles that the Iranians are firing, if there were to be a direct hit, it wouldn't mean very much. Those missiles are 12, no, 13, 14 yards long and massive. I have a picture I can share with anyone who's interested of me standing next to one of them that was fired at Israel in 2024, in April of 24, that landed in the Dead Sea, and so it didn't fully explode. Uh, but the bomb shelters are necessary today mostly because of the remarkable shrapnel that's coming down. When these missiles are intercepted overhead, the body and parts have to go somewhere, and gravity still works. So they come down, and they come down with quite a force, and even just small pieces. Imagine just here, I'm holding a can of seltzer. If a piece of metal this big, it's not working so well because of my because of the fake background, were to fall and hit somebody on the head from miles above, you're not going to survive. So the bomb shelter is necessary for that. In older construction, they have communal bomb shelters in buildings, and in even older construction, like my son and daughter-in-law who have moved into my house, and his bedroom happens to be our bomb shelter. They don't have they would have to go to a communal bomb shelter in Jerusalem, and that's really not practical with a 6-month-old baby and having to run down 4 flights of stairs. Um, so yes, bomb shelters are a fact of life. I would like to call up. I know some others have questions, and I'm going to keep going as long as you have questions. But Marzi Amirizadeh, my good friend, my partner in Root and Branch, Marzi, if you want to come in and ask a question, but more importantly, I would love for you. You just have to unmute yourself If you want to be on camera, that's great. But just to share a little bit, Marzi, in addition to becoming a really dear friend in the last 3 years, we're partners on this remarkable program called Root and Branch, bringing Christians to harvest olives. Marzi was born in Iran. She knows what's going on. She became a Christian in 1999. She spent about a decade evangelizing and ultimately was arrested and sentenced to death because she became a Christian in Iran. I don't know if Marzi doesn't want to ask a question or doesn't know how to unmute, but if you're with us, Marzi, and want to unmute and ask a question, I'm happy for you to do that. But I'm really blessed that you're here and grateful that we're partnering on this amazing program. And for everyone who hasn't been on Root and Branch or doesn't know about Root and Branch, please look at rootandbranchisrael.com and find out details. Pastor Mark Jenkins, you're with us. We used you as a guinea pig earlier to test to see if we could pull you up. Since you're with us, if you have a question or two, you're very well informed on Israel related things. Would love to have you. And meanwhile, I'm going to keep rolling on. I'm going to look at your questions if the two of you are up. Let me scroll through these. John, you ask a question. Who has the ultimate decision-making authority in the war against Iran, Israel, or the United States? I don't know, but we could see as things evolve, um, we could see differences of intent and difference in politics. Look, there's a midterm election in the United States, and President Trump and the Republicans need to, unfortunately, politics matter, and at the same time, and so the war might become inconvenient, and at the same time, we have an election in Israel, and a war might be supposed to be good for business. I would hope that the conducting of the war is not based on politics, but we have to be realistic. And I don't know who's calling the shots, but I will say, as a dual American and Israeli citizen, I am tremendously blessed to see the cooperation between the two. And I will just reiterate a point I made before: for anyone who says that the U.S. is being drawn into this war by Israel, that it's an Israeli war, that yeah, you can see Bishop Benjamin shaking his head. No, it is not. And how many days did we discover that it's been since they hijacked the American embassy? 16,937 days. So in a little more than 40 days, we're going to be at 17,000 days since they took to the embassy. That is a number that was the shot across the bow, and that was the declaration of war that we've still been at. I saw a note from my friend Brian Sanders. It's hard to scroll through and see everyone who's here. There you are, Brian. Let me bring you on to ask a question if you like. Joyce, thank you for promoting. Everyone look, I'm not going to delete it, but look at Joyce. And if you didn't see it, Joyce, thank you for posting about the judgment of Elam from Jeremiah 49 verse 34. I'm not going to go into it, but I mean, this is scripted for what's happening now. I'm going to leave that comment up. Jeremiah 49 verse 38. Brian Sanders, a good friend in Dallas, producer of Why Stand with Israel. Always great to see you.
Likewise,
And
brother.
you also have your hand on the pulse of a lot that's going on. I would love to know what questions you have that I have addressed or not addressed.
Well, Jonathan, I just want to say I'm praying for you and praying for Israel every day, especially when the alerts. So you have the alerts on my phone, just like a lot of the Israelis and probably some on this call. But as soon as the alerts spark, I instantly go to prayer. But I can only imagine what it's like. I have several questions, but one I'd like to just say is, with everything that you guys have been dealing with since October 7th, and actually even before that, if you think of just the history of the Jewish people and all that you've gone through, there's October 7th, there's the war with Iran right now. I'm sure every Israeli or every Jew in Israel is thinking, what's next? And can you give us a reality what that's like for some of us that can't really fathom what that's like on a daily basis, or you guys are very resilient and we just love your faith in the Lord and Hashem. But can you give us a reality what that's like for some of us that can't just fathom that perspective on a daily basis?
Look, we know that as look, I'm so glad it happened this week. I'm so glad I could allude to the fact that Israel's the eighth happiest country on earth. And if you look at I don't know who the top seven are, but typically they're Scandinavian countries. They should be worried. They shouldn't be so happy because they've opened their doors to a tremendous Islamic threat that they need to do something about. But we're happy people. I think happiness also comes from purpose. Uh, Purpose comes from having a united mission, and we have that. Not all Israelis are observant. Not all Israelis necessarily pray 3 times a day or keep kosher or Shabbat the same way that I do. But we're all connected, and beginning today, Thursday in Israel, Israelis in public start to wish one another Shabbat Shalom. That you should have especially Shalom, a peaceful Shabbat this week, knowing that
Amen.
we're in the midst of a war. Um, and on the previous, Deb, are you still Deb Campbell? A question came up on the previous briefing I did with the Daughters of Zion about community. Israel, we're 10 million people, but even going to the question that Bishop Benjamin asked, we're united. We're still an Israeli people, and I think as one big family, and I'm speaking from my brother's house, every family, parents, spouses, siblings, all have disagreements and all have stress and tension among each other at some point or another. We're all human, but we all still are existing as a family, even with the divisions. And this puts us on the spot. I wish and pray, and you know this, Brian, and many of you who are following. October 7th of 23, we were coming out of a season of remarkable and unprecedented divisiveness, and all of a sudden we had remarkable and unprecedented unity. Um, or maybe not unprecedented, but healthy, remarkable unity. And and so we're there now, and I pray that continues. How do we exist? We exist because we have to. I think Golda Meir had a quote that our secret weapon is we have nowhere else to go, or in this case, we have no alternative. We're not going to lose a war because we're tired of it. We're going to win. We're going to fight, and sometimes it requires somebody holding up the guy's hands, right? We know that. Where's that verse where they had to hold up Moses' arms? We still win, but your arms get weary, your bodies get weary, your spirit gets weary. We're human. How many other human frailties are there that God put out for us in the Bible? That gives me encouragement because he doesn't expect me to be superhuman, and I'm not, or any of us. We all have our flaws. So I think that's just, but living, but I'll say this: living in a world where you have to send your kids to the army. Okay, Bishop Benjamin, not all of our kids go to the army, but most of them. Knowing that when we do, they're not getting deployed maybe to somewhere thousands of miles. The front line is in our backyard, and we live with 2 degrees of separation. So everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who's been impacted by this war. I'll share with you something that my oldest son shared when they went into Gaza for the first week in late 2023. One of his soldiers was killed by an RPG. So that was December, I think, of 23. My son just sent a picture to our family WhatsApp that his widow and mother of 6 children was just remarried this week. So even with all of that, life is going on because we cherish it, because we're in a righteous place.
Yeah, I think normalcy is defined differently how you guys look at that perspective than anybody else that hasn't lived or walked in your shoes.
Correct. Jamie Sanchez, Brian, I want to give you another chance for a question. Jamie, I'm just finally seeing that you are here. Forgive me for not seeing that before, joining as a panelist. And I also want to see if I can find Ken Barron for a question who said he's here. Brian, you have another question? I'm happy to address it. You
Yeah,
should
I
get
just
here.
wanted to, yes, it's this and a follow-up. It's today, six nations vowed to stand with Donald Trump, President Trump, and the U.S. in keeping the Hormuz Strait open. Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, France, Britain, and Japan. And I know Britain has kind of come a little bit late to the game, but how does that make you feel, or Israelis feel, that others are now coming to the fight? Because I know you mentioned you were kind of concerned why some of these other Arab countries that were attacked by Iran, they haven't come in and defended themselves or joined the fight. But now finally these six other nations have come and said, we're going to help keep the Hormuz Strait open. And I have one more question after that, and that'll be it. Sorry.
So I'm glad that they're coming to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. That to me that indicates that there's been international pressure from the United States, and that's fine. And it indicates that they are concerned about the price of gas in their countries, and that's fine. I'm disappointed with all of these countries because they should be on the front line, especially the European countries that have been breached by Islamic radicals. Um, they need to be on the front line in the war to not only be there for the free flow of oil, but for the free flow of Judeo-Christian values. How's that? And they're not, and they abdicated that. I didn't know if you said France, but France has been waving the white flag for generations, so I'm thinking that
Yeah.
they're probably still.
Yeah, they were part of the six too today. I was actually shocked to
Okay.
see them. And as we know, what UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, I was surprised he would join this time, this late in the game, especially after the rebuke from President Trump recently. But the last question is, you mentioned earlier about the Abraham Accords. Are you kind of concerned of where the Abraham Accords may be going with Syria, with President Trump maybe inviting Syria that he mentioned several months ago, and even this new board of peace? How are Israelis adapting, or what is their take on all that?
So I don't want to ever speak on behalf of 10 million Israelis because you'll have 20 million answers. Uh, but I'll
True.
speak on behalf of myself. I think the Board of Peace is a ridiculous idea. You can't bring in countries to be on a Board of Peace that don't recognize the viability and legitimacy of the State of Israel. So that automatically disqualifies it. And anyway, right now, any Board of Peace is ridiculous. No one's looking at that. We're right now engaged in a war. I think as far as the Abraham Accords, I don't know. Look, I don't know if President Trump is guilty of the same thing that I will generously say of other people looking at the world through the prism of how they want it to be rather than how it really is. It would be lovely if Syria was part of an Abraham Accord and there was peace but it's really hard to imagine that under the existing regime.
Yes.
The president of which has only been president for about 14 months since he took over in a bloody coup, and the president who is not a reformed terrorist, he's just a terrorist. And until a little over a year ago, there was a $10 million bounty on his head by the
Yes.
FBI. So he's not legitimate, and we would pray that there would be an opportunity for peace for all of these countries. And I alluded to it, I think, before. Maybe with the elimination of the Islamic Republic, we'll start to see the trickling down of the wilting and death of its tentacles, and if that can truly bring peace, democracy, a lack of hostility, a realization that people, as Rodney King said once upon a time, can't we all just get along? Maybe, but in a previous interview today, this is my fifth interview and briefing today. In a previous one, some asked me about the relationship between Shia and Sunni Muslims. They're always trying to fight and kill each other. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm expecting peace. And Israel's always the boogeyman for the last 100 years. So time will tell. And I don't necessarily trust all of the partners of the Abraham Accords now. So that's one of the things that we need to look for in the future. It's a good question.
Mm,
Um,
thank you.
thank you for being part of this, Brian.
My pleasure, brother. Praying for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie Sanchez, Sun Broadcasting in New Mexico. Was really wonderful to get to see you at NRB. You
Yeah.
asked me some really great questions, and first of all, thank you for helping promote this conversation today. I don't know if you want to do the big unveil of our project together. Um, but hopefully that will take place. But it's important for you to be here because you're also representing the voice, not just of yourself, but the people who are watching and listening to Sun Broadcasting. I love it if you would share any questions you have.
Yes, thank you for having me. One thing I've been noticing is there's been a decline in Christian supporters for Israel, especially the younger generation. Um, how are ways that we can educate them and what's going on because they just see the media of what's going on in Western media is different than I think what's really happening. So
Yes.
how do we help them understand that and support it? Because I think it's a very important thing to support Israel, and America should, and as Christians, we should be supporting Israel and the Jewish people.
So I'm going to answer first in a really in a way with tremendous hubris as a Orthodox Jew. I think first and foremost that needs to start in the churches. I
Mm,
think that churches need to engage young Christians and people who are coming from Christian families but with not necessarily accepted Jesus themselves personally, but they're living in a home where that's the culture. And I think that the churches must make a intensive commitment that this be a priority. Biblical values. And by the way, I'm probably the only Orthodox Jew you'll ever hear say this. It's important for Israel. It's important for the Jewish people, but it's equally and no less important for the church. And
mhm,
I really believe that. So that battle starts in the church. It starts on Sun Broadcasting. It starts
mhm,
everywhere. The front line of that battle is probably social media. So when I was alluding to fighting the for truth against the lies, I think that we communally need to take on that battle as well, and be sure that we're out there posting truth, posting reality, albeit and looking at my social media. I didn't know I had so many bots as friends. They've been following me. They've been posting some horrific comments and memes all week, but I don't care because I want people to see the evil. A bot is artificial. It's a nothing. My latest post was a truth. Truth will always defeat the bots, or something like that, with a big Israeli flag. We just need to keep getting the truth out, and if that's where young people are getting their information, church number one, social media number two. And I'm not prepared to speak about the details of it yet, but I would invite anyone who's curious to send me a private message offline. Something that I hope we will announce. It's been sidetracked a little bit by this war, but we're going to be talking about a program that will appeal to Christian youth
mm,
so that by the time they get to college, they're already firm in their understanding of the significance of Israel historically and biblically. And that will be on my last trip to America, I began to be in a place where I could articulate that things that were post-war. We need to stop being reactive and proactive. This is one of those big proactive things. It's not because there's a war. It's because we Jews and Christians are on the side of truth. We worship. I hate it when people say the same God because he's the only God. Everyone else is a loser because they're not. And uh, and we just need to remind young people in the way that they are processing data and information what the truth is.
mm.
Anything else, Jamie?
Um, so there's a lot of confusion about Israel in Western media. So how can dialogue help people separate actions of government from the lives of ordinary people? Like, and I think
Oh,
it's important hearing directly from you instead of like what the government is saying. I mean, and that can go in both ways, but
So that is important, and I guess that's why I do this. By the way, Joyce Lagno is asking a question if you've been to Israel, Jamie. I know the answer is yes, multiple times. And Jamie's mother, who I just get weepy remembering, was a dear friend, and who also and her mother and her grandfather, it runs in their blood, and yeah, we don't have better friends than them. Um, that got me sidetracked about your question. Sorry, I was too busy bragging on you.
No worries. I was
What did you
asking,
ask me?
how can dialogue help people separate the actions of government from the lives of ordinary people?
Okay, so for those of you who have been connected and followed me in Genesis 1, 2, 3, although I don't mix my writing and my opinion pieces with Genesis 1, 2, 3, since October 7th of 23, I've written in excess of 250 articles. I sometimes feel that it's so boring for me to do that, but I'm encouraged by friends, mostly Christians, like you, Jamie, like the people here today, because it's hard to get a sense of the truth. It's hard to get a sense of just facts on the ground, and people want this information. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why this is my fifth such conversation today. And if I'm stranded in America, I could be downstairs in front of the fireplace with my brother and sister-in-law watching a movie and having a glass of wine. But I'm here having this conversation with all of you because this is what's important. Governments, okay, you know what? I have a lot of problems with the current Israeli government. A lot. That's for a different conversation. But they're my government, and they're advocating for me right now. And we are in an existential war that we must win. Not just give them a big punch and knock them down, but knock them out for the count. And so people need to hear conversations like this, personal things. Come to Israel. And I would say, and I'm sorry to do this, but yes, I'll give a shameless plug for Root and Branch. Come to Israel on a program like Root and Branch, where you're connecting with the people, you're connecting with the land. Not that I ever want to put down the traditional pastors tour, and I'm not picking on any one pastor, but where you're getting on and off a bus all day seeing stuff. You need to see the people. You need to connect with the people. You need to understand what makes us tick. What are our fears? Like Brian asked the question, what are our hopes? What makes us tick? And I would argue also for those of you who are in America, and I know we have a few countries and continents represented here, get to know your Jewish neighbors. Someone asked me in the course of all these conversations, American Jews are living in fear now. We're living behind paid security and and yeah, so American Jews would love to hear. They're going to be distrusting at the moment, wondering who you are, but reach out, pray for them. How can we help you? Um, Continue to show that love that you have, Jamie, that all of you represent here. And Paul, thank you for clarifying that today you're identifying as Joyce. I'm not going to go further on that one, but we love you both, Paul and Joyce. Um, Jamie, do you have any other questions, or should I go on to someone else?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, well, stay with us if something comes up. Um, Let me go to Deb Campbell. We just had a great conversation with a bunch of women from Daughters of Zion all over the country. I really enjoyed that. I felt guilty leaving you in order
It's
to come
okay.
to this, but I'm glad you and maybe some others are here. Bring in whatever questions you have about this and maybe a continuation of our conversation.
Well, I thanks for being with us tonight. It was just wonderful to have you with us earlier. And we all have such a heart for Israel and the Jewish people, and many of us have been to Israel many, many times. Um, on a side note, I teach Israel courses in a Christian high school, and as I mentioned earlier, I think when I sent my question in, was the eighth war front for Israel and our global Jewish communities is social media, is media, and public opinion. And as we've probably noticed over the last several weeks, between Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, My high school students, being Christian, and we represent 129 churches in our Christian school.
Wow.
So we kind of teeter between maybe the theological perspectives, but the majority of the students in this school um, really don't have they have Christian friends, but they don't have Jewish friends. They went to the first synagogue tour of their lives last fall. And even though you're immersing them in the pro-Israel perspective, we have lots of perspectives that are coming straight out of social media that are a day-to-day conversation in the classroom. And it's like somehow the truth perspective is important, but it seems like we have to wrap our arms around what is a larger, I don't know if it's an initiative or something where we're really barreling it out there, because the social media, and maybe Jamie, with being in media, you find what is it that we can be pushing out there. We've got Facebook, we have Instagram, they're on TikTok. How can we get that word out? Because I think even the Christian conservative element is also challenged at the adult level. So I've got it on two different fronts, at least here.
So I don't have an answer, but I know
Yeah.
it's a super important question. And I'd like to ask you to remind me after I get settled back at home, so
Yes.
hopefully soon, to pick up this conversation and maybe have a
Yeah.
dialogue like we're doing now,
Yeah.
with that being the agenda. Because I said it, I think I said it, I don't remember which conversation I said it. I'm never the smartest person in the room unless I'm the only person in the room. Did I say that with you guys today,
You
or somewhere
did.
else? Okay. So I know that there's a critical need, and
Yeah.
again, it's not me speaking, Jonathan, as an American-born
Yeah.
Orthodox Israeli Jew. I'm also speaking someone who cares deeply about Christians and the church,
Yeah.
and if that's not addressed, uh,
Right.
pastors today may be afraid of speaking out on behalf of Israel because they might be afraid
They
of
do.
losing 10% of their membership, and that means
Yeah.
10% of the offerings, and there's a direct financial consequence. And I understand that. I'm not
Yeah.
happy about it, but I get it. But if they lose 10% of the church just because, or 20% of the church because people are not staying in the church, not because they
Right.
said anything, that are walking out, they're not going to another church, they're just leaving the church. That's
Right.
bad for us all. So
Yeah.
we need to have that conversation. I don't know the answer.
Well, I will tell you, just as an encouragement, that I did put that out to all of our DFC state directors, that we have got to lay the groundwork in prayer um, to, I don't know what you want to say. We have to pray against the misinformation and pray in the truth.
Yes.
This is a
Yes.
prayer assignment, and that's what I put out.
Thank you.
So I would say that to all of you on this webinar, that prayer lays the groundwork, and that does the work on the front end. And then perhaps, Jonathan, we come up with some more
Yeah.
strategic divine intervention type thing that we can
Okay.
tackle.
Well, I'm in. It's
All
very
right,
important.
I'm in, of
Thank you, Deborah.
course.
Before I go to Ken Barron, wait, someone else is up here. Okay, before I go to Ken Barron, I just want to one last time offer, is because we're going to wrap up with Ken. Anyone who has questions you want to put in the Q&A, please do. And I want to just go through. First of all, Eric, thank you for putting up the link to Root and Branch. If anyone wants more information, you can reach out to me. Go to rootandbranchisrael.com, or ask for more information. But it's really one of, not just because I'm working with Marzi, but one of the most remarkable special programs I've ever had the privilege of working on. Scott Carpenter in Alabama. The best thing that ever happened to me is getting connected with many of my Israeli brothers and sisters, and of course, visiting Israel. Correct. And Jamie, that goes to one of your questions as well. Scott, you also had another point. We are bringing truth as Christians about Israel and the Jewish people to Mobile, Alabama, a little at a time. You know what? Those are the key words, a little at a time. great curiosity from the young generation. So we need you to be part of that conversation. And Scott, I know you weren't able to join the Root and Branch Unity Conference with your daughter, but we were going to have her on panel as well, talking about the future of Christians, young Christians in Israel. I want to encourage, I'm going to scroll through questions, but I want to invite Ken Barron to ask the last two questions. Wait a minute, before you do, Ken. First of all, we need from Rebecca, we need to know where the attacks against support for Israel are coming from. Please read this. Okay, I'm not going to read that article now, but I'm going to save that and I'll be glad to share that. I hope I get the text of this and I can share it with all of the people who participated. Nearly 20 years ago, I was going up an escalator at the Opryland Hotel at the NRB convention at a time when it was very uncommon to see Orthodox Jews at the NRB convention, and a voice behind me said, "Oh, you must be Jewish too." And I turned around and saw this guy who's a little bit older than I, and we exchanged cards at the top of the escalator. Ken's been like a big brother and dear friend since then. We are now piloting a program for which Ken is chairing, one of these big projects that's going to be post-war, long-term, called the Israel Heroes Resilience Network to support soldiers and their families with material needs. And Ken's joining us from Charlotte. We just got to spend a few days together. My very beautiful haircut is thanks to Ken's wife, Cynthia, because after a month on the road, my hair starts to look a little bit shabby. Ken, thanks for joining. Wait, we're not hearing you. You are not muted, but we're not hearing you. After that big buildup, if we don't hear you, that'll be a bad thing. Yeah, try again. Now? No, we're not hearing you, Ken. That's terrible. Does anyone want to ask a question on behalf of Ken?
Still
Oh
not
dear.
hearing me?
There you are. There you are.
Hey. Well, listen, this has been great. I appreciate everybody's comments and their interest. And yes, we are embarking on this. You can see my background if you want to know anything. It's not that big a deal, but if you type in on YouTube Reagan, Graham, and Jew, my face will pop up and you'll see my testimony. So you can see
That's almost as big a cliffhanger as Who Shot JR.
it's kind of the same. So my comments, John, and I was on the phone with a rabbi today from Israel. I didn't have a chance to share this with you, and he was talking about some of the same things that are being asked and some of the same things that we are trying to do, and that is somebody asked the question, what's the morale of young people in Israel? And I asked that same question today. The interest in this was a very young rabbi, and he said there's a much different, and like you, he was born and raised in, so I made Aliyah 20 years ago. So you guys have similar backgrounds. But the difference, I have a son who's, as you know, a colonel in the Army, in the U.S. Army, and in charge of security for a lot of stuff. But he's my oldest. And as we go down in years, there's a difference in these generations of kids and the influence that we've seen through social media, basically, and what's happened. The difference between Israeli young people, I think, and the US is that in Israel, kids are raised from the very beginning with a sense of nationalism and a sense of pride and a sense of character. They're raised and taught character right from the very beginning, from where they are. In this country, that is waning and has waned, and we're getting totally away from that unless you're in a very strong Christian community, uh, like we are in Charlotte or some of the southern cities. But around the country, there's this they're being young people being influenced by uh, totally by the media. And if we want to really battle against this propaganda that's going on, and it's very reminiscent of 1937. Not that I was around then, but I am a student of the Holocaust and what was going on in the world. The propaganda that's out there, the anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish mentality that's always been there, but it's more prevalent now in the U.S., is because of the media propagandizing and taking the side, and they're very liberal. We must get inside the heel of that. Jamie, I'm glad you're in the media, and we have to find a way for, as Christians and as Jews, to get our heel into the media and have an influence there and to get to our young people. And I think that what we should do in the United States, which is totally not going to happen, is to make everybody serve in the military or some kind of civil service after they get out of high school. That would be the greatest thing, but that's not going to happen. But I think that's something that has to be done. Now, going to what we're doing, Jonathan, there's going to be a real challenge, and we're already seeing it in the young people, young soldiers are now are increasing, of course, PTSD and suicides. I think suicides increased 37% in the last 2 years in Israel, which is significant. And those are going to be people who really need support whenever this hot war ends. There'll always be a Cold War somewhere in Israel or against Israel, as the Bible tells us that. And we need to be able to support these young people and support their families.
Yes.
We do that in the U.S. We're not doing it very well in Israel because it's scattered. Things are scattered. Everybody wants to help, but Samaritan's Purse, who I work with, as you know, sending food and medical supplies into Israel. That's not exactly what I think Israel needs. I think Israel needs support, verbal, emotional, and support, not even in the way of funding. We need to support them emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And we need to pray. All of our Christian people need to pray, and we need to get every single young person in this country to Israel. Everyone.
Okay, well, Ken, there's no disagreement from me on anything you said. Um,
I said a lot of nonsense, but I said a lot.
you said no. It's all very good and important. The one thing that's funny to me, and I'm glad you picked on Jamie representing the media, but it's funny because you said we need to get things in the media. When you said that, I thought because you're Jewish and I'm Jewish, that the irony is that Jews are accused of controlling the media. So if we're talking about needing to do something, then obviously we don't have that control now, do we? But I want to close up because I know I always when I do these I follow how many people are staying on. We've been on for a good more than an hour and a half, and this is amazing. And we could continue, but there's some thing that we learn in running programs is you always want to leave people to leave people wanting more. So there will be more. And this is an important conversation. As I said, I'm real grateful to be having it. I'm grateful for people who have made the comments, providing the verses from Jeremiah 49, verse 34 and through 39 about Elam for the number of days since the taking of the American embassy, 1,600 16,937 days, who Jonathan also posted. I appreciate this, the verse from Exodus 17, verses 11 and 12. When Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. We need your prayers to keep upholding our hands. And the last thing I do, and I didn't even think of it because I've been so engrossed in thinking about the implementation. Bishop Leon Benjamin, thank you for sending me a note that you would love to pray. Let's close in prayer.
Oh, goodness gracious, Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to partner and to align ourselves, oh God, with the scriptures that says, pray. Psalms 122 and 6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They that love thee shall prosper. So, Father, we thank you, Lord, for the relationships that we have that are being forged right now out of necessity, but also out of the heart of love and the heart of God. We thank you, Lord, that you will strengthen now Israel. Strengthen, oh God, Jonathan and his team in Genesis 1, 2, 3, and all of the ministries that are now waking up, oh God, to understand, oh God, that we need to unite. Let the spirit of unity be released now, oh God, throughout this call. And don't let it end. Let us continue, oh God, in a full relationship that will blossom into wholesome, wholehearted energy that will be significant in the days ahead. We thank you, Lord, oh God, for giving us this strength now between Israel, United States, and other nations around the world. That, Father, out of one blood, you created all mankind. And we're coming back to that again. And we thank you for it now. It's in the precious name of Jesus Christ and the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. We thank you for it now. Amen, amen, amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you all for participating, being part of this, joining me, giving a chunk of your evening. I will make the video available, the audio. And like I said, we're leaving people with a lot of information, but a lot to be answered. And maybe next week after I'm home, we'll even do a follow-up. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. I hope it is a peaceful Shabbat. And I'm going to close out the conversation with just my quick podcast outro. We always need to acknowledge that the podcast is sponsored by our friends in the Willow Run Greenhouse in Culpeper, Virginia. And I tell people if you're ever in the area, please go say hi and thank them for making conversations like this possible. And also to our friends, the Coin family as well, for their meaningful sponsorship. Inspiration from Zion and all of the Genesis 1, 2, 3 Foundation programs are made possible by donations. And we talked about that. So please consider joining us to help continue the dialogue and build bridges. Truth is, this was put together so quickly. There was no sponsor. So, but I do want to invite any of you or anyone you know, if you'd like to sponsor a future episode in honor or memory of a loved one or special occasion, to be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com. We'd always love to hear your comments as part of a dialogue and invite you to send any questions as well, especially questions about traditional Judaism for our Ask the Rabbi programs. Please share this with others who will also find it of interest and continue to join us right here as we bring you more meaningful conversations about unique topics relating to Israel that you won't hear anywhere else. Wherever you are in the world, I pray that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. And while I am not in the Judean mountains, I send my prayers and blessings from the great state of New Jersey and hope to send them to you from the Judean mountains shortly. Thank you and God bless you all.